Shalom and welcome again to another edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm Rabbi Richard Address, the director of Jewish Sacred Aging and the host of these podcasts. Thank you very, very much for your time in joining us in this video or audio podcast. These podcasts are designed to explore issues related to our own aging and the implications of longevity for our families and community, and we welcome your comments and suggestions. You can email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com, and we invite you also to visit our Jewish Sacred Aging Facebook page. One of the more interesting conversations that is being held in families around our community and all communities has to do with the varieties of impact of the LGBTQ revolution. And we are very, very honored and pleased to welcome to today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, Reva Farenback-Brateman, a geriatric case manager and community educator for the Jewish Family and Children's Service here in Southern New Jersey. But equally, perhaps in today's conversation, more important, the creator and facilitator for Aging with Pride. So, Reva, welcome to Seekers of Meaning. How are you? Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Hope you're well.
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me, Rabbi Address. It's good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you, and Jewish Family and Children's Service of Southern New Jersey, which I am a big fan of, does some unbelievable great work, as many other JFCSs do around North America. But let's get right to it. You are the creator and facilitator of Aging with Pride. That can be taken a variety of different ways. I'm aging, I hope, with pride. But what is it specifically is the program that you created, and I guess why?
Well, we have some initials before it, LGBT, standing for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. Although when I was first advertising this program, there were some seniors who didn't know what that meant and just contacted me and said they were aging with pride, as you just said. But it is a group for older adults who identify within that group. Originally, I thought it would be 60 and over, but it's actually we've dipped down into the 50s, and our oldest member is in his 90s.
Wow.
Yeah, he runs rings around me. I always tell people he swims twice a week and is taking classes. I mean, he's fabulous. And he actually was the impetus for creating the program. I run a memory cafe for care partners to bring their loved one who has memory challenges or dementia. And he was coming with his husband of 62 years. And it occurred to me one day, what must it be like to be an older gay adult taking care of an older gay adult? Obviously, their parents were no longer alive. They were in their late 80s at the time. I had no idea if they had any kind of social network. And I really thought, I don't know any resources for older LGBT adults. And I went to Marla Myers, who's the CEO of Jewish Family and Children's Service, and I proposed the group. I barely had it out of my mouth, Rabbi Address, before she was on board. She found a sponsor for the group. It's Tim Rice, one of the elder care attorneys in Voorhees, and we've been going ever since. I mean, first I had to familiarize myself. Although I had gay friends many years ago, I assumed that many of the men would be dead because of the AIDS crisis, and that there would be a lot more women. Boy, was I wrong. We have a lot more men in the group, and it's a variety of people. Some were in heterosexual marriages and have children and grandchildren. Some knew they were gay when they were teenagers and always had gay partners. Some are lost their partners through death, or, they just broke up. Some are in gay marriages. We have 2 trans members of the group. And, a lot of single people.
So this group meets on how does it meet? Monthly, weekly? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, the group started in April of 2018, and we have met once a month on the second Friday of the month ever since then. Of course, during the pandemic, we switched to Zoom, but we're now back in person. And we meet for an hour and a half.
Really, that's all. I mean, that's. Are you? Is it like 50 people, 10 people, 40 people, or it varies from week to week and stuff like that?
Well, it varies. Right now, we have 56 members. We
5,
actually
6.
gained 5, 6. We gained
Right.
12 during the pandemic, and
Wow.
last Friday we had a meeting. There were 4 new people who came, 2 men and 2 women. We have increased our women over the years. I do speaking engagements in different places. We advertise, but word of mouth is really the best. And sometimes I'll have one spouse come and check out the program, and then, the next month they bring their spouse along. Some of the folks are working, and, Zoom actually was good for them because they could steal away. But we had 22 people last week in person inside the Jewish Community Center, which is where we hold the meetings.
You just described a significant age generational difference. You have people in their 50s, people in their 90s. So have they discussed have there been discussions about differences in approaches to the LGBTQ acceptance between the people in their 80s and 90s as opposed to the people in their 50s? A very, very different cultural support system when people grew up in those two different eras. Has that ever been part of the conversation?
We've had conversations with our younger LGBTQ groups, but you know what? Some of the people in their 50s are still not out in their workplaces or with their families. Some of them came to it late, to the realization of their identities. So I think a lot of them had to be hidden and are still hiding their identities. Not necessarily with friends and close family, but further out in the world.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating to me that in this day and age, I think that a lot of the popular, obviously, misconception is that there's a greater openness, and yet you're reporting that people in this group are still not, quote, out. How does that dialogue take place within the group? Is there support for this, or how do people find support for this? It's a very interesting dynamic.
It really hasn't come up. I mean, I do have one woman who I still officially don't know her last name. I know she was a former teacher. She first came to the group. I was talking at the Cherry Hill Library, and she really peeked in to see if there was anybody she knew there, although she's not from Cherry Hill. But she does not disclose her last name. And I only communicate by email with her. I don't call, don't send U.S. mail to her house. And she's probably in her early 70s. Most of the group is in their 70s, I would say. The 90s the 90-plus-year-old is the outlier. He's our senior member and very important to the group.
So it's very interesting. The demographic you're describing is basically first stage baby boomers, so people born at the very, very beginning of the baby boom generation, who witness in their lifetime, because I'm part of that generation too, we've witnessed this shift in LGBTQ acceptance and everything. So, for example, you may have had this. You may have had this conversation in some of the groups. How are they dealing with, especially in the trans community, the trans individuals, with all this language change now, binary, non-binary, the changing of pronouns? How have they related to this?
Well, it's sort of interesting. We did an intergenerational program, and on their name tags, we asked them to put their pronouns. A lot of my older folks, they're like, huh? They just did not relate to that. In terms of the trans people, they are now what they are. So we have one female to male. He's a he, those are his pronouns. Right. And vice versa. We have a male to female. And when you're trans, that is, you have adopted those new pronouns. People who are still questioning, and you'll find this more a lot of times with the younger people, they may use other pronouns like they.
Right.
Or they may use a combination, or if they're non-binary, and with younger people especially, you almost have to ask each time you meet with them, what are your pronouns? Because they could be gender fluid, and that could be changing.
Has there been, I would imagine that with this program, you have a real unbelievable opportunity, I guess if the group chooses, to really partner with or make themselves available to younger people in the community who are questioning and who may have issues about who am I? How am I? How do I do this? How do I navigate life? How do I speak to my parents? How do I speak to my grandparents? Is there any attempt to really do some outreach into the younger LGBTQ community or the young adults or teenagers who are questioning?
Well, Jewish Family Services runs two groups. It's called Project Rainbow, and originally it was for 6th to 12th graders. And then they felt that was too wide of a margin in terms of ages. So there's now a tween group for middle schoolers, and then the 9th to 12th graders. And we did hold a session with them a couple of years ago. The pandemic really threw us off course.
Right.
My folks were really concerned that the young people didn't know the history. And they were thrilled to find out that the young people did, that they are aware and they are interested. And the younger group has more trans members than my group. We're, as far as I know, the only game in South Jersey for older adults. There's other things going on for young people. My folks don't go to the bars. They don't have places to connect. I mean, they would love a community center if we could give it to them. You asked, it's only once a month. It's true. They would love more. Some of my people are from Philadelphia, and either they go to the William Way Center, and some people from here across the river. But, a lot of older adults don't like to either drive into Philly or take PATCO. So, we serve an important function.
For those of you people who aren't local, and because this is being heard by other people around North America and maybe other parts, we're living in southern New Jersey, right across the Delaware River from Philadelphia. So from where we're talking to downtown Philadelphia, center city Philadelphia, is 25-minute drive on a good day without traffic if the transportation gods are nice, like any big metropolitan area. So, but there's a real, where we are is basically a suburb of we're in metropolitan Philadelphia, and the Delaware River is sort of like the boundary. So just to make that clear, so if people may not, familiar with our particular geography. We're talking with Reva Farenback-Brateman, the geriatric case manager and community educator for the Jewish Family and Children's Service of Southern New Jersey. But more importantly for our conversation right now, or equally as important, I shouldn't say more important, is the creator and facilitator for Aging with Pride, a major program for older adults here in Southern New Jersey, in the LGBTQ community. We'll be back with Reva in 1 minute, but I want to take this opportunity to remind my colleagues, Jewish clergy who may be listening or watching, of a very, very interesting opportunity for continuing education being offered by the Wurzweiler School of Social Work out of Yeshiva University. I'm involved in this program, and they've asked us at Jewish Sacred Aging to let people know. This is the certification program in gerontology and palliative care that's specific for Jewish clergy, run out of Wurzweiler and Yeshiva University. It's a online course, totally online, several courses during the year, about 6 courses during the year, and 8-week modules spread out during the academic program year. There's a whole series of open houses. And if you're interested in learning more about the open houses, if you're interested in learning more about the program itself, some of the open houses that are coming up specifically after we post this will be in September 23rd and October the 4th. We encourage you to contact Rabbi Liz Rawley, and you can contact her at capital LIZ dot capital ROLLE at YU.edu. That's capital LIZ dot capital ROLLE at YU.edu for more information about the open houses and the certification program in gerontology and palliative care offered by Wurzweiler School of Social Work out of Yeshiva University. Check it out if you're interested. You don't have to travel. It's all online, and it's a very, very interesting and powerful, and you will use it immediately in your work for both clergy and rabbis, cantors, etc. So, Reva, back to you and this wonderful program of Aging in Pride. How many other Jewish family services in North America are you aware of that have a similar program to outreach into the older adult LGBTQ community?
I'm not aware of others that are running this group.
If somebody may listen to this,
there are some who obviously we all serve this population.
Right, correct.
If people tell you they don't have any LGBT clients, they just don't know. They haven't asked. And we changed all our forms and everything for intake, to capture this. But I'm not really aware of people running a group like I'm running.
So suppose somebody's sitting in a city somewhere in North America, and they say, "Wow, this is something that we have talked about. How can I find out more information?" How do they contact you? What's the email? What's the best email?
Okay, it's RF, like in Frank, Brateman, BRATEMAN, at JFEDSNJ.org.
And
I can't see if that's on the screen for me or not. But
no, that's okay. That's okay. We'll take care of it. But
or just if they go to Jewish Family Service of Southern New Jersey, JFCS of Southern New Jersey, SNJ, they will get to our website and they can find our information on there.
And go to the great God Google. The great God Google knows all, sees all.
And I would love to hear from people. It is such a rewarding group to run. They are so grateful to have a place to come together where they can be their authentic selves and just deal with the isolation. And particularly after, we're coming out of the pandemic, but, that just exacerbated it for everyone. They deal with a lot of the same issues as anybody who's aging.
Right. Well, that's a question. It's a question I wanted to follow up on too, because we've done a couple of podcasts in recent years. Some people from New York and Heshi from Philadelphia across the river who have specialties in the aging community, the LGBTQ community. And, I remember having this conversation, and we ran all the LGBTQ programs out of my department when I worked for the Union for Reform Judaism. And there's this perception, it's just like everybody else. But the reality is, as I was taught, and I'm interested to see if this has come up in your conversations, that for example, getting into a facility, an assisted living facility, are these facilities open? Is the staff trained to deal with this particular community? Sexual preferences, sexual activity, living arrangements together. Do these conversations come up? Have they run into issues in various, to say, well, it's time for us to move into an assisted living or this type of facilities? Are these conversations part of your dialogue?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. And New Jersey happens to be a fairly progressive state in terms of LGBTQ issues. In fact, this past March, Governor Murphy signed legislation that will go into effect, I think, in September. And facilities will have a year to get trained. These are long-term care facilities, which includes assisted livings. We call it cultural competency on, how do you be inclusive and what are the needs of this population? And of course, for people who are trans, it becomes really important because, they may be getting personal care, and it could be a shock to a worker that the way that the person is presenting and saying, I'm a man, I'm a woman, and then, when they're being bathed, it's a different story. You don't want a worker to freak out. You want people to be prepared. And, there's attitudes, different religions have different attitudes about this too. But every worker, not just the top administrators, will have to have LGBTQ training within the next year and a half. Yeah. And it'll be posted in the facilities. Pennsylvania is not as liberal, and we just have much better laws here. But, interesting things have come up. The trans man in our group has said, well, he has to still go to the gynecologist because he still has female sexual organs and he needs to be checked like any woman would be checked, for different female gynecological diseases. And that could be very uncomfortable,
right? Right.
So there's so many things that you don't think about until you're working with people. It's really, I've had to educate myself a lot. I am what we call cisgender, meaning I identify as a female and that's how I was born. And I'm heterosexual and married and have a son. Our group does not have allies. They tolerate me because I created the group, and they tease me a lot. I tell them I'm not changing teams quite yet. So
What have they taught you?
they they are very kind and open. And, I don't have a therapy background, so I don't approach the group that way. I approach them as people who are maybe struggling with, issues of aging and wanting a community. And they've taught me that just, I don't know, they're just wonderful people, and obviously they've taught me about, some of what they've gone through. They don't necessarily want to rehash the past. I mean,
Right.
the pandemic did bring up some of the trauma of the AIDS and HIV epidemic in the 80s and 90s, and of course it still exists, but there's medications, so that people can live a pretty normal life. They don't want to talk about AIDS. The women will sometimes say, we took care of you, back in the day. And the guys will say, yeah, we appreciated that, but, I mean, we talk about cultural things, about movies. Generally we have a cultural report every month. Because my guy in his 90s is like, really on top of the movies and the films and the books. And,
I have to ask you, because what you're just alluding to, where's the Jewish component of this? How does this come up? The religious, the spiritual? Are a lot of these people Jewish? Are most of the people Jewish? Are they, many of them, are most of them members of a congregation? Or I'm interested in that component of the group, if this even enters any of the conversations.
Most of the group, well, maybe 20-25% of the group is Jewish. Some do belong to congregations. I have another member who belongs to First Baptist in Morristown, New Jersey, which isn't too far from here. And he's very active. They actually do have an LGBT group within that church. And their assistant pastor is a lesbian. I have a member who's a sisterhood co-president in her synagogue. We've had different religious leaders come and speak with the group. I had invited a local rabbi to come talk, and he asked if he could bring his friend. And this rabbi identifies openly as gay. And he asked if he could bring a pastor from the Lutheran church down the street who also is gay. And so together they came and talked with the group. I think they're like anybody else. Some are more religious than others. And others, we have a lot of people who grew up Roman Catholic. And some, have stayed with that. And others, felt they weren't accepted and left the church. So it's a mixed bag.
Right.
We have used some Jewish prayers sometimes. People are very accepting of that.
This sounds like, would you say, before we run out of time, and again, I thank you for sharing all this, and would you say that this experience since I think you said 2018 in running the Aging with Pride program has changed your life?
Oh, it definitely has. it brings me great joy. You know, I've been a social worker a very long time. I've worked with all kinds of groups. I do a lot of work with dementia, but I think because they are so grateful to have a place where they can come and be accepted and, you know, meet one another. I'm not sure that, I don't think we've developed any couples out of the group. That isn't the purpose, but
No,
I do
no.
try and connect people, you know, so that they have somebody to go out to dinner with, so they have somebody to see a film with. I try and announce birthdays every month, you know, and if I know people are connected, I'll like send a few of their friends an email and say, hey, so-and-so's birthday is coming up. Maybe you want to touch base, because they may not have people who are wishing them a happy birthday. Not necessarily because they're not accepted, just because of their age.
Right.
You know?
Yes. The ageism transcends all types of issues, especially right now in this country, but for a long time.
Yeah.
Reva, thank you very, very much.
Okay.
What? No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, when you ask people about their identities, a lot of members of the group, and I'd say probably most, don't put LGBT, you know, whichever they are, first. You know, they, you know, I mean, think of yourself, you know, well, you're a rabbi, so maybe you do put Jewish first, you know, it's always like American Jew or Jewish American, but, you know, wife, mother for me, you know, Jewish social worker, you know, my sexual identity is not necessarily the first thing that comes to mind, and it's not for them either.
No, it's private.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
No, but for the kids, they're still struggling, a lot of them, and so, you know, that will be more in the forefront for them.
No, but I'm glad that that you spoke about, which is why I asked the question about this intergenerational contact, because your Aging in Pride group can really be role models for young people and young adults who are on various pathways and maybe questioning and struggling. And yet here's a group of people who say, come, I walk this walk and take advantage of my experience. Yeah. It's so you're okay. You're going to be okay.
You'll survive.
And you'll flourish.
On Sunday, October 3rd, we have a program called Rainbow Table, which is for folks 18 and over who identify as LGBTQ+. And it's to create that intergenerational conversation. We had one a couple of years ago. We've canceled two because of the pandemic. And the conversations were great. They really were.
Well, Reva, thank you very much for your time. And more importantly, thank you for all the mitzvahs that you're doing with this group, and continued success, continued good health. And I'm sure I'll see you either in the building or on Route 70 someplace, and just stay healthy. And thank you very, very much for your time. And
thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure, believe me. To all of you, I want to thank you again for joining us on today's edition of the Seekers of Meaning podcast, the TV show and podcast of Jewish Sacred Aging. We're on the Roku video streaming network. If you don't know what that is, ask a kid. They'll be more than happy to tell you what it is and how to get there. Again, if you want to reach us, just email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. And if you'd like to make a donation so that we can continue and add to our work here in the podcast, go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com, and click on the donate button and just follow the prompts. Seekers of Meaning is produced in the broadcast center of Lubetkin Media Company. It's in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And again, a major shout out to our producer, Steve Lubetkin. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address, and I look forward to greeting you on our next Seekers of Meaning TV show and podcast. And until then, stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy. Enjoy life. Shalom.